Creatine is one of the most studied supplements in the world. I recently started taking it back in 2023 to help with my brain fog that I had postpartum, and it was like a miraculous cure. It's also been widely studied for performance enhancement, even to assist in fat loss in some cases. And even more impressive, it's actually been found to help improve feelings of depression and anxiety and improve your memory. But creatine doesn't just come in a powder form. It's actually naturally found in high amounts in a select few foods. So today I'm sharing the 11 foods that are the absolute highest in creatine so that you can start reaping the benefits of adding more creatine into your diet. Let's dive into it. My name's Autumn. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's nutrition human performance. Now, before we dive into this, it's important to know how much creatine you really should be getting. Most of the studies show that around 5 grams per day is what's needed to actually see the benefits. This will be really important to remember as we go through the list of foods so that you really know how much of these creatine foods you need to be eating. Okay, the first food is herring. Herring is a type of fish and it ranks as the absolute top source of creatine. It has a crazy amount of 3 to 4.5 grams of creatine per pound of herring. Now, most people eat about 4 to 6 ounces of any given type of protein per serving, which with herring, that means you're gonna be getting anywhere between 0.75 to 1.7 grams of creatine per serving. So if you're doing the quick math, even from something like herring, which is very, very high in creatine, you need to be eating about 1.25 to 1.5 pounds per day. Okay, the second source is beef. And beef comes in at about 2 grams of creatine per pound of beef. Now with that same 4 to 6 ounce serving of beef, you can expect to get about 1/2 to 3/4 gram of creatine. Beef is my absolute favorite go-to source of protein as a nutritionist because not only does it have a good amount of creatine, it's loaded with protein to help with the body recomposition goal, and it has so many important nutrients that a lot of us are lacking in, like iron. Okay, next up on the list is pork. Pork is really an unsung creatine hero. It actually has a little bit more creatine than beef. And pork comes in at about 2.3 grams of creatine per pound of pork. Now for that same 4 to 6 ounce serving of pork, you'll be getting about 0.6 to 0.9 grams of creatine per serving. And one really important tip, especially if you have a fat loss goal in mind, is to opt for either the pork tenderloin, pork loin, or pork loin roast. Certain cuts of pork, like the pork belly, contain a lot more fat than it actually has the protein, which can make it difficult to actually hit the amount of protein that you need from that source. This is actually very similar with a lot of plant-based proteins like lentils, where although they do contain some protein, they have a lot more carbohydrates in this circumstance than they do protein, making it not the best source of protein, at least when you're really trying to maximize for body recomposition and fat loss. Okay, next up on the list is salmon. Salmon actually has the exact same amount of creatine per pound as beef. So in addition to those creatine benefits that you'll be getting from salmon, it also has amazing anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids too. These fatty acids can help to reduce inflammation and overall just help prevent a lot of chronic disease. In fact, I actually have a free 5-day high protein meal plan. So if you guys want to check that out, it is completely free. I'll have it linked down in the description below. Each day has brand new recipes. So there's a lot of things to work with, a lot of tasty, delicious foods to get higher amounts of protein in. So again, I'll have the link for that down in the description below so you don't miss out on that free download. Okay, next up is codfish. Cod is another type of fish and it has about 1.4 grams of creatine per pound. So this means per serving, you're going to be getting about 0.35 to roughly 1/2 gram of creatine. Up next is one of my other favorite protein sources, and that's tuna. Tuna comes in at about 1.8 grams of creatine per pound of tuna. So this will be about 0.5 to 0.7 grams of creatine per serving. Now the reason why tuna is one of my all-time favorites is because it is so dang dense in protein. Like you can just get one of those cans of tuna and it has about 40 grams of complete protein, but it's also so easy to always have on hand. I always keep multiple jars of canned tuna in my pantry so that I can just whip up an easy tuna salad to have for lunch and have a very tasty high protein lunch that takes minimal prep. I personally like the brand Safe Catch Tuna because they're the lowest mercury brand option. Okay, next up on the list is lamb. Now, when I was looking deep into the breakdown of how much creatine is in each protein source, I wasn't able to nail down a specific amount of creatine that's in lamb. I think like a little bit more research needs to be done there. But from what I was able to find, it's quite a big range of between 1 to 2 grams of creatine per pound of lamb. So this means anywhere between 1/4 to about 3/4 gram of creatine per serving of lamb. But a huge bonus specifically with lamb is that it's typically grass-fed. This can improve the nutritional value of the protein source that you're getting while also still getting a good source of creatine. I like to use ground lamb to make burgers or kefta. Okay, next up is one called plaice. I believe it's called plaice. I've actually never had it. Plaice. This wasn't a fish I was familiar with until I started doing a deep dive into this topic. Plaice or American sole is a type of flatfish and it has about 0.9 grams of creatine per pound. So you're going to be getting about 1/4 gram of creatine per serving. Okay, next is bison. Now it shouldn't come as a surprise that bison is on this list because of its close relative beef already being very high up on this list as well. So bison is another one I wasn't able to find specific amounts of creatine on, but it looks like about 2 to 2.8 grams of creatine per pound of bison, which really puts it roughly on par with beef. And you can use bison in pretty much anything that calls for beef, so it's a really easy swap. I personally have been loving these little bison bars from Epic, especially if you're a protein bar person and if you need something to grab quickly on the go. This is my next best recommendation that actually contains a good source of protein as well as creatine. Okay, and then we have chicken. Typically chicken is going to contain much less creatine than red meat, but it can still add about 0.2 to 0.3 grams of creatine per serving. Chicken also tends to be low in a lot of important nutrients like iron, but switching it up and having chicken on the occasion is still a great high protein option. One of my favorite ways to have chicken is with my spice detox tenders for my 7-day detox program. They are so dang good. This is one that a lot of the community members who have kids love to share with their kids as a much healthier alternative to regular just chicken tenders. If you guys want to check out that recipe, I will also have the 7-day detox program pop up right here somewhere. Okay, and then we have turkey. Just like how bison and beef had really similar creatine levels, you're going to get the same thing with turkey and chicken. So it's not necessarily the most dense source of creatine, but it will still contribute a bit. Now, as you can see, even with some of the highest sources of creatine, it's still pretty tough to get that recommended 5 grams of creatine to see the majority of the benefits from creatine. So the way that I like to approach this is making sure I load up on a lot of whole food sources of creatine, like beef, like fish. But even for myself, with eating these creatine rich foods on a daily basis, I still saw that I had room for improvement and still benefited from having a creatine supplement. Especially postpartum when I had some crazy brain fog and like memory loss. I swear it was like creatine just solved all of that for me. So it is one of the supplements that I do like to take in addition to having the whole food sources. In fact, I did a whole 60-day creatine experiment where I actually took creatine for the first time and shared exactly what happened, what my results were, and what you could probably expect to happen too. So if you want to check that video out, I'll have it linked right up here. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love this science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.